with Sophie, who will have floor in a minute. But first, some like practical things, especially those who are here in person. We have coffee available here during these 2 hours. And if you are taking the bus to the other venue that leaves 10:45 already, so you can leave quietly before we finish. But panelists and also some others will fit in our cars also if you want to stay until 11 o'clock when we are going to finish this. This panel has been planned together with some researchers and NKJ, and Sophie will talk a bit more about NKJ in a minute, and with the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry in Finland, and Mika Survonen from Ministry was planning to be here but cannot, so we send greetings through Zoom if you are there, Mika. We are organizing this as a side event of Reindeer and Fish Days, Poro- ja Kalapäivät. That is a biannual event in Finland about reindeer and fish research. And we also have very small side events, small but long side event with some reindeer herders from Finland and Sweden and Norway going on at the same time. And in all these, the topic is knowledge, use of different kind of knowledges. And we hope that there will be also some input from the audience to the discussion. Running the show, we will first hear very short hellos and then start with 4 separate slots with a different kind of topics. And the topic will be presented by one of our panelists first, and then we open the discussion. One of our panelists is online, and we will start with her. And please, if you are following online, you can also post comments in the chat, and people who are in the audience, just raise your hand. We should have time for discussion like this. And always when we speak, we should speak into one of these microphones so that people who are following the stream will hear us. Anything else?
No.
Perhaps we first ask short hellos. So who are you and where are you coming from?
You can actually start with Bruce.
Oh.
Because I'll be speaking very soon.
Okay. Hello, I'm Bruce Forbes. I'm a research professor in global change at the Arctic Center, University of Lapland in Rovaniemi. And I've been there 30 years, actually Saturday it will be. So I just got back from Greenland and I'm going to cook a leg of lamb from South Greenland, where I'm working with sheep farmers, but also reindeer herders. And be talking a little bit later about knowledge sharing, different ways of knowing about different kinds of pastoralism, and looking forward to sharing experiences here and hearing quite a diversity of views, I hope.
Hello, Svein Morten Eilertsen from NIBIO, Norwegian Institute of Bioeconomical Research. Only been working with reindeer for 29 years, so I'm 1 year behind Bruce. And, yeah, located mid part of Norway, Kjøtta, but NIBIO, we are spread all over Norway. Lots of work in northern Norway.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sanna Hast. I am working with as a senior specialist in the Reindeer Herders Association of Finland. My background is in research, so I have been working with natural resource use in the reindeer herding area of Finland, and reconciliation problems between different land use interests in the reindeer herding area. So have been working with reindeer husbandry for something like 16 years. So not so long as my my colleagues here, but yes, the issue of how to integrate different kind of knowledge into planning systems has been a focus of my work as a researcher and also as a specialist at the Reindeer Herders Association.
Thank you. And Maya, you are with us online. Maybe you just want to say hi.
Yes, well, hi. I will present myself soon, so I don't know if I should say anything now. For now.
Okay. We'll get back to you soon.
Yes.
My name is Sophie Anderson. I work as a project coordinator for NKJ, or Nordic Agri Research, and I'm here because I represent the Nordic Reindeer Committee that is co-hosting this Nordic panel, and I will just explain a little bit of the session of why we're doing a panel that is Nordic. So the Nordic Reindeer Committee, it consists of representatives from each of the reindeer owning countries. So it's Sweden and Norway and Finland. It came together after an agreement between the countries that reindeer husbandry is something that we should cooperate more on. So what Mika and Bilge and Emma are doing at the board of NKJ is that they're discussing different activities of how we can increase the dialogue between the countries, both when it comes to practitioner, but also research on reindeer husbandry. You can visit our website, nordicagriresearch.org, if you want to look a little bit more into what we do. But also, so Nordic Agri Research is a cooperative body under the Nordic Council of Ministers. So we fund cooperation between researchers within food and agriculture overall too. So some of the main activities that the Reindeer Committee has funded are research networks on reindeer husbandry. We have Tarandus, that some of you may know, that actually got new funding now. So they're doing the Tarandus 2.0. We have one research network that has been focusing on solutions for supplementary feeding of reindeer that recently finished and have some of their conclusions up. And there's also one network that is focusing on road salting and vehicle collisions when it comes to reindeer. They'll be finishing now in January, next year. They will have some results from their network too. Other than that, the committee also funded the Nordic Reindeer Conference that was held in 2022 in Norway. We have some printed conference papers for those of you that are here. For those of you online, you can find the conference paper in the chat. But the panel that we're having today is based on some of the discussions that were held back in 2022. Some of the conclusions that were made during that conference was that reindeer husbandry in all the countries are facing the same challenges, but they have very different organizational structures to face those challenges. And it's mainly land use change, climate change, and also the issue of predators that are big topics in all three countries. It was also concluded that it's very important to, with cross-border cooperation when it comes to facing these challenges that are common. It's important to have a dialogue between practitioner and governance. It's also very important to have both interaction and integration between scientific knowledge and the practical and local knowledge of reindeer husbandry. And that's pretty much why we've ended up with this topic today. And we will actually jump right into the discussion, and we will start with Maya. She will first give a short presentation, and then we will move on to a discussion on the topic that she is presenting. Maya, if you're ready.
Yeah. På ridigt. Mullen inkabiette Johanna Marja-Kristin Skum is my name. I'm born into reindeer herding and work with reindeer also. So I have many years of reindeer herding knowledge. My research background is actually in sociolinguistics, and I have a master degree from the Sami University of Applied Sciences in Gold again in Sami language and literature, and I am currently working on my PhD on language change within reindeer herding communities. I'm also a board member of the Vindelälven Jotadaka Biosphere Reserve, and also a member of a Gran reindeer herding community. The Vindelälven Jotadaka Biosphere Reserve is one of the largest one in Europe. And there are 7 reindeer herding communities active in the region. But the project I will talk about are 3 communities, Sirpa, Gran and Ran. And if you see it at the map, it's in the middle of northern Sweden. You can say on the Norwegian side you have Mo i Rana, and on the Finnish side you have maybe Oulu or Vasa. You can change the, so we have a project going with Superb, a Horizon project, and Rewilding Sweden, where we look at why restoring boreal forest landscapes are important to fight the effects of climate change also up in the mountains. We have very long moving routes in our region, and we move from the highlands in the mountains to the coast, around 400 kilometers one way. And we move in November, when this picture is taken, down to the coast by Umeå along the Vindel River. And as climate change is a threat for moving along these natural routes, which are rivers and lakes, they are not frozen anymore. So we are looking into projects to open up the old moving routes through the forests. And that's one part of the project. And that's, of course, grounded in traditional knowledge and where the reindeer can move easily on the ground, as the rivers are not going to be useful anymore. And we already see the effects of that. The other part of the project is to identify places for restoration of these boreal forests. We have, as you know, industrialized forestry has been going on the Swedish side and also on the Finnish side, of course, for the past 50, 60 years. And 70% of the ground lichen is disappeared in the reindeer husbandry areas in Sweden. So the largest threat, as we see it now, for reindeer husbandry in our area is the forestry, that we don't have any food for our reindeer during winter. And if we then put climate change on that, there are a lot of threats, really. So you can move to the next picture. You can move to the next picture if it works. Yeah, so this is moving up on the right, and on the left you see that we also need to give the reindeer supplementary feeding due to climate change, but also due to lack of pastures, especially in winter. Summer, the reindeer find their food. I was also going to say, how can it help us to restore boreal forest land and fight climate change up in the mountains? Well, these large herds of animals, of course, keep the land open and are also very important for the biological diversity of the land. So by cooperating with reindeer herders and seeing reindeer herding as we see it, as a process during the whole year, where we use the different lands at different times, we can tell the researchers where we need to do the work on the land, so we can keep on doing our reindeer herding, so we can keep on moving with these large herds of reindeer, so they can keep on using the pastures, and by that help fight climate change and also help preserve the biological diversity. Next picture. Yeah, so this is now in September. Soon we will take the bulls out for slaughter, and this is up in the mountain areas before snow comes and we start moving down to the winter pastures again. And this project, you will get to ask questions. It's easier for me to. It's been essential to have a close cooperation between researchers and the local Sami communities, reindeer herding communities, because these reindeer herders, they have known this land for generations. They know every hill. They know all the changes that have happened, and we have immense destruction, I must say, on our pastures due to forestry, and now also with this so-called green industry, which is coming with the windmill parks and mines and so on. You are probably aware of this. So this restoration of reindeer pastures is very important, and I must say also we have been involved in many research projects, but in this one we wanted to have action on the ground, so we got to pick out areas, and there are people been working now for two years to open up, for example, these moving routes that I mentioned earlier. So it's happening, it's action at the same time. It's not only research and to see what's going to happen, and I think that's the difference that I see from previous projects. Yes, I think that was my 5 minutes of presentation.
Thank you very much. We have some discussion points prepared, but perhaps we want to first ask from the audience, like comments, questions.
Thank you.
We always speak to the microphone.
Thank you very much indeed. My question is about ancient migration routes, which you mentioned that these may need to be reactivated. I wonder about the scale of the project and the difficulties. Could you just say perhaps a few more things about how to restore ancient migration routes if need be?
Yes. You see, before, because we have so long migration routes, and we try still in this area to move the herds by hand, but with of course, with modernization, we started to put the reindeer on trucks to get them down to the winter pastures. And this was also because of starting to get more and more infrastructure and more forestry in the way of the routes that have been used for centuries before. But also due to modernization, of course, it was more effective and so on. There are many factors, of course, impacting on this. And then, but we have always moved on the river up in spring when we move up to the mountains. We've always used the Vindelälven, the Jotadacka. It's Jotadacka, it means Jottingain, as a migratory route for reindeer, where you move the reindeer. But now we see, because we've been experiencing now climate change, at least I would say for 15 or 20 years, we see the winters has changed. And in the past years, the river doesn't freeze as before, and it opens up earlier. So we have to find other ways to move the reindeer up in spring primarily. And then we have started to look at these migratory routes that were used in autumn before we started to modernize ourselves and use the lorries. So now we're clearing up to get the connectivity in the areas, because these pastures have been fragmented largely due to forestry, intensive forestry, to get the connectivity, get they connected again. So we have to open up these migratory routes that have been grown. It grows a lot of, and it grows fast nowadays also. So that's what we are doing in cooperation with Rewilding Sweden now and Superb. But it's not, that's one part of the project. We also have we have also sat down with the reindeer herders and looked at areas where we can, for example, remove contorta. You know, contorta, the invasive species that I've introduced. And how to get, because where you have had contorta, you don't have any ground lichen, or you don't have anything, the ground is dead, you can say. So we want to come up with protocols, or how to, when you remove the contorta, which the companies do today, but how do you get the ground lichen to grow again? How do you get the land to become alive again, so the reindeer and other animals can live there? So that's another part. We also have identify areas where you can open up more. I don't know the word in English, perhaps the forest researcher knows better. More röjning, gallring, open up, take away the smaller trees, you know. We have also talked now how to do when they turn the soil around to plant new. You know, this is all very known knowledge, how to get the ground lichen to grow again, and how to restore the. So there are many parts of this, but what we've first started with now is to open up the migratory routes to so we can continue to move with our reindeer as we have done always, and also to get that that aspect of the importance of these herds, to keep the land, keep it open, the spaces open, keep the mountains open. Yeah, I don't know if that was a long answer to a short question.
Thank you, Maya. I also have one question, and it's if you can also talk a little bit about the like the practice of and methodology of identifying these areas to restore, because reindeer owners are being heard, and on how to identify these areas. But are there types of actors also being heard when identifying this, or do you see any conflicts when it comes to identifying areas to restore?
As our part in this, we have, I would say that this is the Biosphere Reserve the Biosphere Reserve is like a neutral arena with many activities, but where many actors who live along the Vindel River meet and talk on the same level. So it's meant to be a neutral arena for meetings between, so there are government, like universities represented, forestry, all kinds, everyone who is active in this area meet there. And I think that's been a really good starting off point, to meet and talk around the table and see it different. Well, we have, of course, different views of the landscape and how to use it. But then in this project, as we have done, we have only pointed out to the researchers or in Rewilding Sweden the areas that we want to work with, and then they have been in contact with the companies or with private forest owners then to take it further on. So the initial phase, it's been meetings with the reindeer herders and looked up on the ground in their sidas or in their winter pastures. Every family have their own winter pasture, you can say, where they know the area very good, what has happened, and they can point out also why in winter, because we're here in winter time, so we don't see the land in summer really. But how for an example, how does it, you have a clear cut, for example, and it's done in different times. Why does reindeer dig on one part of it but not on the other part? And then the researcher can come in and say, yeah, but they have been they have done this to the land at that time of the year, at that time. So that's why, and then we will know, okay, that's why they don't dig on half of that clear cutting. It can be, oh, I lose my English, gödsling, for example. Fertilization have a great impact on the lichen, ground lichen, for example. And reindeer, they don't eat blueberries. So, and the blueberry bushes grow really fast when you fertilize the ground, for example. So there are so many different factors, but I think our part in this project at first has been to talk with the reindeer herders, and then the organization Rewilding in this case, or the project have then taken it further to the companies.
Okay, so perhaps we ask again from audience and also from our panelists. So now when you listen to Marja and these experiences about the rewilding restoration projects, can you give some like a comparable examples also from other Nordic countries, or how does it sound altogether? And also this finding neutral places to have discussions together. Sanna.
Well, first of all, thank you for the presentation. It was very, very recognizable, this situation in Sweden and the issue with forestry, that it's exactly almost exactly the same in Finland with this practice of forestry for the past 60 years, very intensive industrial forestry that has changed the landscape completely and changed the pasture areas of the reindeers. And we are now looking at this issue of how to restore these kind of forest pasture lands for the reindeers, because it is also an issue of adaptation to climate change, but also adaptation to the other industrial land use that is spreading. And my question or comment would be, do you find in your process, I'm very happy to hear that you have this kind of a process going on, and I'm very keen to hear how it proceeds, because we would certainly need this kind of positive examples that we could also promote in our situations here in Finland. We have like some very tentative or preliminary examples of negotiations with the Metsähallitus of the Finnish state forest enterprise, of how to start restoring some damages of forestry, or this of creating ditches, for example. So draining wetlands. That has not been a successful project, but it has destroyed a lot of pasture lands, particularly summer pasture areas. So we have some tentative examples of this collaboration with the herding community, or the herding cooperative, and Metsähallitus, together looking at where to start restoring wetlands or summer pasture areas. But I'm now coming back to my question. Do you find that in this process you are facing difficulties with other land users, for example, wind power projects or other industrial land use projects that would come in the way of this restoring of the migration route? I'm curious to hear, because I know that in Sweden the wind power development is very, very strong, as it is also in Finland.
Yes, of course, this is on not a very big scale yet, but as it is in reindeer herding today, I think we are pushed from all around. So we have so much different kind of industries that are using and want to use our land, that there are no alternatives left for us now with climate change. Also, before, when we had bad winters, we always had land that we could call like reserve lands, or where we could go, but those lands are not anymore. They are either clear cut. We don't have any old growth forests anymore in our winter pastures, where we also have a forest reindeer herding community, Maro, who are in the forest all year around, and of course are deeply affected by forestry and also now the windmill parks. But I think we see it as someone is listening to us, and someone is seeing the benefits for the ecosystems and for biological diversity. It's not just for reindeer husbandry. We also have in Sweden, on the Swedish side, a view of reindeer herding, I would say, from the majority society, which isn't very positive, especially in northern Sweden, that we are in the way of everything. But here we have partners, so we can cooperate with people who think alike and also think in long terms. For example, that you make an agreement for 30, 40 or 50 years ahead. So it's more like our kind of thinking, that you can't just think for the next 5 years, or like we are used to when we are in negotiations with the forest companies. But of course it's a competition up here in the north now with the green colonization, or the green change, or whatever it's called, green industries, as they call them. So of course it's not, but I think at least this is, we can do something on the ground, and we can make good examples, and you can improve forestry. You can do things that also others, so for other land users, and for us who are really indigenous to this area and have been here for a very, very, very long time, and reindeer have been here since the ice melted. So I think it's very strange not to go into these kinds of cooperations. But I will also say, for reindeer herding communities, as I said, we have a lot of impacts from different, also a lot of researchers who want to, especially now, they want to research on climate change. That's and the Arctic. So for us, we don't have the capacity to take them in. Also, it's very important for us that the reindeer herders get paid for their time, and that the work that is being done for the first project that we've started with rewilding, that the work goes to the reindeer herders firstly, and they get paid for that. They get paid for being in meetings and so on, and also that you see the result on the ground, because we don't have so much time. That's hard facts. We don't have so much time. Reindeer herding is it's struggling. So for research projects to come in and say we will want to look at this for 4 years, and then maybe we can say something, that's not interesting for us in our reindeer herding community. I will speak for only our, because we have a lot of those kinds of requests. So that's also one. There's some, and that you listen to the traditional knowledge bearers. And I also want to add that it's quite that you can talk to someone who have seen the land change for the past 40 or 50 years and know the land so good. That's a quite extraordinary knowledge about the landscape. And to take time and listen to this knowledge, I think it's important to acknowledge this and acknowledge the knowledge of the indigenous Sami reindeer herders.
Thank you. And maybe also before Svein goes on, maybe Bruce also want to give your perspective on a short comment on this.
Well, when you start with the map, I'm actually, I look and I think of Finland. We have these many smaller districts, so we don't have these long migration routes, but the issues, as Sanna said, are actually quite similar. And when you talked about the success with the regenerating the lichens, this was interesting for me. So if you could shortly say how you have success or experience with that, because the districts I'm working in are not forested. They're mainly up by the border with Norway, and lichens were trampled mainly starting when the border fence was built. But herders there have strategies for regenerating the lichens, mainly having enough people and to keep them from trampling those lichens in summer. But could you just mention shortly what your experience is with regenerating the lichens that you mentioned?
But this is, I think that's one of the things they are testing, how you can do this, but primarily, and this is, of course, we won't see the result very quickly. It's maybe for my children or the children to come. Okay. So it takes a very long time, but you have to look with the forest companies, how many plants do they put per square meters, for example? Is it necessary to put like now 1,400 plants, or can you, if you put 900, you will have a more open ground, so the lichen will grow by itself. Yeah. Can we remove the contorta? How do we get the lichen? That's what our wish is that they should look at, because now they say by law that they should remove the contorta, but they doesn't say anything on how to, because what do we do with the ground if we don't have any lichen there? So it's like the step how. So for us, it's been important to come in with our views on how we can get the reindeer to some food for the reindeer from the ground, so we don't have to buy artificial food feeding, because that's not good for the reindeer. So that's like from different directions, but this is not, there isn't a quick fix. The land is destroyed, and I mean, we think in terms of our children maybe, yeah. or maybe the generation after, that we can hold out for another generation, do something positive, or meet other actors that see our view, that understands how we look at the land and understand the view that we have of the land, and listen to us, because that's not hasn't been and isn't very common on, at least not on governmental level. But if we can talk to the companies, for example, that have other, I mean, the market and how we discuss, I mean, this is very, very big, but so from the big and get it down to maybe how the machines, how you can get the drivers of the machine when they do the plowing of the land, that they don't destroy the ground lichen. It is possible, but it has to do who drives it and what kind of education does the driver have of the machines. So there are many ways you can affect how they do the forestry, because the forestry will keep on going, but it should be room also for us on our lands.
Thank you, Maja. And I think Svein also has one last comment regarding your project.
Probably then we can continue with your.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's really interesting topic. This, and in Norway, which is not a big forest country, there have been increased focus on closed cuts instead of clear cuts. that you just pick up the largest tree, and I think that's really interesting. In Norway, it has not been due to the reindeer husbandry, but it's due to biological increased biological richness to take care of that. But of course, to the reindeer, that's really interesting, because then you maybe don't lose the ground vegetation, and due to the climate change, it's really humid, so the tree lichens also will survive inside the closed cuts instead of clear cuts. So yeah, I think that's really interesting topic.
That's great. So
Okay, thank you very much. Was it so that Maria, that you need to leave quite soon?
Yes, I need to leave just before 9 o'clock Swedish times.
Okay, but thank you for joining us, and I guess we will go forward. So we will have our next topic quite closely related to this. So Svein, please introduce the topic, and then we can discuss about impact assessments.
Yeah, impact assessment is the main part of my speak, and it's I think I'll list up lots of problem with impact assessments in Norway from the reindeer husbandry's view. So we can give the next slide. And I need a helping list to remember all the points. Because in area planning in Norway, it's the municipalities who are responsible for the area plans. And there are any plans or encroachments, building houses, any kind of infrastructure. And in many of these municipalities, the planners do not have enough knowledge about reindeer husbandry. So they don't take care of the reindeer husbandry in their planning. And therefore, very often the reindeer herding districts, the Sommerbyar, is too late informed about the plans, building plans. So they get too late into the planning process to have the opportunity to change the plans, adjust it a little bit. And in Norway, it's the Plan and Building Act to regulate which plans have been very need an impact assessments. And in that plan, it says it may come into conflict with the traditional Sami outdoor industries, or is located in reindeer husbandry's special value areas, or in conflict with the limited seasonal pasture, or may otherwise come into conflict with reindeer husbandry land use needs. And that's the problem, because it's the municipality planners who should know if it comes into conflict. And then they have a lack of competence. They don't understand that it's necessary with the impact assessment. So too many projects is realized without an impact assessment, just because the municipality planners don't have enough competence. That's one important point. Just take next picture. And this is, in a way, the impact assessment. You find the value of the area and try to understand the impact of the planned project, how the impact is on the reindeer herding or reindeer. And by combining the value and the impacts, you get a degree of consequence. And the consultant who makes this impact assessment here, it's his job to find the value and decide the impacts. And of course, that's really a hard topic. You need to know the reindeer, and you know the reindeer husbandry to get the right level of value and impact. And then you have another, one problem for reindeer husbandry. It's that the investor pays for these impact assessments and chooses which consultant company who's carrying out this impact assessment. And you know, when they select consultant based on price and not on competence, it don't sound good. And another point that then you choose consultant on price, he or she try to use as little time as necessary. For instance, meeting with the reindeer husband is important to earn money, so they to make this assessment as quick as possible. So I think also that's a problem, that both the investor pays for the assessment and money is an issue. And of course, if the consultant lack local practice knowledge about reindeer husbandry, the assessment of value is not, it might at least be incorrect. So local knowledge about reindeer husbandry is really important. And of course, in this impact assessment, there has been a tradition of emphasizing research-based knowledge, avoidance distance for reindeer. Look, if you have any publication, say that reindeer avoidance distance is 1.5 kilometers from mining industry. I used that in the assessment instead of speaking to the reindeer herders. How long do you think the avoidance distance is in this area? How will your reindeer be affected in spring, in calving season, in late autumn from this mining? And of course, that affect the impact scale on which level you end, if you use only the research information or if you include the reindeer husbandry's knowledge. And another challenge is language. Sami reindeer husbandry use Sami as their main language, and to tell or inform the consultant only, for instance, use Norwegian. You might lose important information during that translation. And I think all these points might influence that the degree of consequence not ends in right place. And I think one paradox in this is that, you know, since the value scale is important, if you find an area with some or medium value for reindeer husbandry, it's easier to get them planned, mining or anything there than in the very high area. So if they each time try to place it in intermediate value areas, it's easier to get permission. And when you each time eat a little bit of the intermediate value areas, they get high values because they lose part for part. So, and I think that's the really important thing for the reindeer husbandry, these cumulative effects. So the constructor, I think we try to get on the intermediate areas, but eat it up, so ends up with permission to build. And I think that's the challenge, both how to incorporate the reindeer husbandry knowledge about the impacts on the reindeer from each project, but all time take into consideration that the reindeer husbandry cannot afford to lose more and more and more into areas, because then they lose their flexibility and ends up with too little areas to use to their reindeers. So I think that's some of the main challenge. So to change picture now, I can just give one example, because we're trying out, and I maybe forgot to mention that we are working on this methodology for impact assessment in Norway and try to revise it and see how we can improve or incorporate the reindeer husbandry's traditional knowledge into the assessment. And this is just one example. It's east of Mo i Rana. It's a road, or two old roads were crossing Omskaret, and they built a tunnel through it, and the roads are still up in the mountain. And the reindeer herder tried to explain to us why these two roads does not have the same avoidance distance. The oldest road is following the terrain, not built up. There are small trees around it. And he estimated this, if some persons are using these roads, the avoidance distance to the reindeer is not far at all, because the road is following the terrain. While the other road, newer road, is built up in the terrain, the sounds from people or anything on the road are going a much longer distance, and the reindeer notice who are on the road. So the avoidance distance from that road is much wider than on the other road. So if you just say, we need, say, a road 500 meter wind distance, it's not enough. You need to discuss with the reindeer herders the exact effect of how he or she think the effects of the encroachment will be on the reindeer. So I think that's a really good example of how important it is to incorporate the reindeers' knowledge about their local areas. So I think, yeah, so let's start on this.
Yeah.
So any kind of suggestion how we can improve it, I'm grateful for that.
First, perhaps, where are you in the process?
We have been working on this, collected lots of consultants, how each consultant see the problems. We have in the working group as also in Norway we had something called Rangelands. It's 3 persons who is helping the reindeer herding district with plans who the reindeer herding think will affect them very much. For instance, the Fosen case, mining, roads, and so. And these 4 persons who are working in this Eilertsen, they are really lots of good examples which we use in this work. And now we are in September. We will have a reference group of skilled reindeer herders, reindeer politicians, who will gather together and go through both this value scale, how it's possible to incorporate the reindeer herders' knowledge in this scale, and also on the impacts phase. So we'll work during this autumn on this. And finally, we will give the authorities a suggestion how we can improve this methodology.
Thank you, Svein. Can you talk about what led to the decision to revise this methodology of impact assessments? Since I'm guessing it's not a new problem that reindeer husbandry or reindeer herders aren't heard in the planning process always. So what led to the decision to revise it now?
I think the main point is the Fosen case, that the government in Norway said that this is broke this SP27 rules of what do you call it? Urfolksrettigheter, international international convention, that they lost their ability to have their cultural way of having the reindeer husbandry. And the government saw that the impact assessment did not in good enough way incorporate the reindeer husbandry's traditional knowledge in the assessments. And I think that's why we have this job for the government, to try to improve the methodology.
Comments from the audience, Ida?
Thank you. Ida Melames from Satasniemi district, Finland. I'm a reindeer herder as well, and I have a couple of questions. In Norway, who pays the assessments? Is it the developing companies? And because that is quite a big question in Finland, is it neutral because of the companies pays the consultants? And we have done this a lot in Finland. They usually nowadays they ask reindeer herding communities their opinions and what they think about it, and it's another case, do they still like listen after they have asked that, or does it impact anything? But the question I have from Norway, your case is when these reindeer herding communities or reindeer herders are involving the process, do the companies pay for the reindeer herders for this involvement? Because we may have over 5 or 10 impact assessments going on one time, like ongoing processes, and it takes lots of time. And one impact assessment report can be over 1,000 pages long, and we have to really get into it, and it takes lots of time and lots of resources, as we talked about yesterday, and that is a problem as well, because reindeer herders are experts on reindeer herding and reindeer herding lands, but then they put this 1,000 pages long impact assessment with research language, and then you should have a statement about it. But do you have any solutions in Norway, because we don't have in Finland?
Really good question. And the first one, yeah, it's the investor who pay for the assessment. I think that's really challenging if it then is objective, as I mentioned, if they can choose to consult them. So one of our discussion in this working group is that could it be so that the reindeer herding district could have veto once or twice? For instance, they can refuse the first suggested consultants, or maybe twice. Or maybe should they have the right to suggest consultants which they rely on? But yeah, that's absolutely challenging. So we don't know how to end that, but we have been discussing it really much. And the other thing you mentioned is cost for the reindeer herding districts, and that's really a challenge, especially for the district in areas where there are lots of planned projects. So I think myself, 3 years ago, I did the first time meeting a reindeer herding district that has said that you note how much hours you use in meeting and go through the reports and write the invoice for that time. And I've done it since. I absolutely agree, but that should be a part of the cost for when you plan the impact assessment. And I think the consultant should maybe in the future write how many meetings they are planned with the reindeer herding district and add hours for each meeting, because that's really important. And I think we'll suggest that's a part of the new methodology, that they should be compensating for all time used on this assessment. Because so far the investor just assumed that the reindeer herding district will work voluntarily, because they would try to, in a way, to save their own land. That's not correct. They should compensate for all time. Yeah.
Comment.
Yeah, because we have to. It's something we have to do for like getting any vaikutusta asiaan, like to have any impact on that. But it's not like our job is not to have these negotiations and have these meetings and workshops with these developing companies, developers, and it takes so much time, and it kind of feels like they are using our knowledge for their purposes. So it's difficult situation. I don't know the solution. I think the company should have some payment for the local communities, not only for the reindeer herding communities. There are other communities as well, villagers and people like that who have to get involved, and they don't have resources to participate. And the companies, I have said this in many meetings, that they should pay something for us, and they were like, no, we can't pay because it's a lahjus, right? And they won't pay because of that. But if the official says that we have this list pricing for every company, and if you are going to have meetings, they don't even pay us for like kilometer travel costs or anything like that. They say that we don't pay anything, so because then they just say that we pay to you for be on our side, but it's not the case. It takes lots of time and resources, and I think we should somehow get some solution for that. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I know small herding districts in Norway, for instance, 2 or 3 persons, they don't have capacity to meet the municipality planners on small projects. They say it's okay, we just have to leave it because we don't have the capacity. So absolutely, they should be compensated. so they could hire someone to either look for their reindeer or join the meetings. Yeah, absolutely.
Sanna will have soon more about this, but please.
Yeah, thank you for this presenting this project that you are now developing. Again, very recognizable all the issues of this whole impact assessment process. We have the similar problems, or exactly the same problems in Finland. These points that you had recognized, that what are the kind of challenges or problems related to the impact assessments, and one of them was the cumulative effects of different land use development. I will get back to that, but I wanted to ask, are you doing now in this process of developing the impact assessment, have you, because one of the certainly pinpointed issues is the problem of recognizing the knowledge of the reindeer herders that they are bringing into the process of impact assessment, but it's not recognized as knowledge. So this it's in a way what you were also showing here was this kind of chart of categorizing the effect or how severe the impact is, or this. It's kind of like trying to present the problem in a very understandable way, but at the same time, it's forcing the reindeer herders to try to put their way of understanding the situation into a format that is not suitable for their situation. It's in a way they are forced to, if their knowledge is round, they are forcing this round object into a square or a triangle shape. So this is changing the way that they can communicate their own situation or their own knowledge. But my question, I'm curious to hear, in your process, have you been interviewing the officials or the authorities on the issue of knowledge? Like, do they, because now we have all this talk about we need to integrate the traditional knowledge or the practical knowledge of the herders. We need to do that. But do they recognize how do they know when they are dealing with, what is their perception, the planners or the authorities, the officials, how do they understand what it means that somebody has practical knowledge or traditional knowledge? Do they know what they are kind of facing? Do they know how to recognize what they're dealing with? Because the issue is that the practical knowledge that the reindeer herders have connected to these lands and the animals, it's not the same kind of knowledge that, for example, the municipal planners are using. It's not comparable in that sense, but yet still it should be integrated. So how do we recognize this knowledge? That is my question.
Yeah, and we really discussed that, and I think that's the most important or difficult part of all of it. So, Sophia, if you can just jump one slide back. There, and what we haven't landed yet, it's when we try to find a level of impacts, if you then should write an extra part describing cumulative effects, flexibility for the husbandry, and then try to by word describe how the reindeer herding districts evaluate the situation with another encroachment in their areas, or if you should do it after we have ended in the degree of consequence. Here you end on -2, but if you then take this part with cumulative impacts and all of this and flexibility, and then could move it to, for instance, -3 or even up to -4 if you mean they have passing the threshold for surviving. So actually, I don't know where we end, but we are discussing it really, and that's a really important part.
Yeah, thanks, Svein. And I saw a lot of parallels too. I worked before I came to Finland. I started working in Soviet Union in West Siberia, so I've got a lot of experience with the oil and gas industry, and particularly the gas pipeline developed on Yamal Peninsula. And as you said, or actually as the reindeer herder who was talking about the road, it's exactly as that herder said. When I was there, before the pipeline that's now hooked up to Nord Stream was built, they were first building a road, which was just a bunch of boulders over following the tundra, and then a railway with a big berm, and now pipeline and everything. But I was interviewing herders there already in 1991, and they said the same thing, but they also commented already then in their own language about cumulative impacts. And they said it's not just the road, there's the disturbance, there's the dust blowing off the road. And they commented, yes, we can cross the road that follows the terrain if there's no trucks around. But at that time there was trucks 24/7. They were in such a hurry until the Soviet Union collapsed. Then it stopped for a few years and then it came back. But I think this knowledge is really comparable. And again, I got in the bizarre position where the authorities and the vice governor, they were consulting me and my colleagues like Timo Kumpula as foreigners, like we are the experts. I said, no, you have the experts right there. They didn't want to go down to the level to talk to the reindeer herders, but they would talk to a foreigner coming over with a PhD in this stuff. And I just found that bizarre. But I think the point is that the impacts of the infrastructure and the cumulative impacts, they are the same everywhere. What you were describing here is exactly what I saw there. So I think it has to start with Ido saying, the expertise is right there, but they are busy. They have other stuff to do. They may have expertise to contribute to that process, but it's not their job to do the report for the consultancy. So I think we have to go back to where this knowledge is, and it's not with the guys with the PhDs or girls. It's with the herders, and their time and knowledge is got to be up here as the starting point, I would say.
Thank you. I think we will talk a bit more about this, really like recognizing the local knowledge when you have your 5 minutes. But perhaps we continue with Sanna, because you have also some slides about cumulative impacts, and we can continue talking about perhaps assessments that take into account these cumulative impacts.
Yes, thank you. We've already touched on the issue of the accumulating impacts, but it's certainly the central issue, which is why I chose this when I was preparing for this panel discussion. And it seems to be the same in all the Nordic countries. There is all kinds of industrial land use and roads and infrastructure. And it's the constant struggle to try in the herding communities to try to communicate the issue of the accumulating impacts to the planners, to the decision makers, to whoever is there to develop a new project in their living environment and home. So this is the reason that we need to look into this problem. And I'm also in my work, because I work in trying to advise how to reconcile different land use interests with reindeer husbandry, and how to avoid conflicts, for example, and how to integrate, in short, how to integrate the planning, the reindeer herders better into the planning processes. And consultant companies or the consultants who do the impact assessments, for example, they ask me sometimes, so how do we assess the cumulative impacts? It's so difficult. There are so many things going on. We cannot take into account everything because we are just here to develop this one, or we are here to assess the impacts of this one wind power project. So how are we to take the responsibility of these 60 years of forestry and all these other wind power projects, or this mine plant here, or this tourism center that is here? We are here to assess the impacts of this one wind power project. So they are, in a way, the system is built so that they are not starting from the perspective of the herding community, but they are starting from the perspective of the one project that is here to be planned, for example. So that is, in a way, the first issue. They're not starting from the situation of where the herding community is at the moment, because the herding community needs to be able to work in that area that they have. They cannot move somewhere else. And that area is already impacted with other land users and has been impacted for quite many years, decades. So if we are not able to start from the perspective of the herding community, from the very first steps, then we are not able to understand the cumulative impacts. And that's why I like to emphasize this, because that is the only way that we can actually get to understand the cumulative impacts. You have to start with the herding community, from their situation, and already what they are already dealing with and have been dealing with for decades. So instead of looking at one project that we are now here to develop, we need to understand what is the situation that the herders are dealing with already. And you can show the next. You can show the slide of the industrial land use in the Finnish reindeer herding area on the left. There is operative mines. There are mines planned. There is operating wind power and wind power plant. There is almost the whole of Finnish reindeer herding area, except the few herding communities in the very north that are mountainous herding communities. All the other parts are boreal forest herding communities, so very much impacted by forestry. There's roads, there is tourism centers, military training areas, water reservoirs, so hydroelectricity development, and all kinds of stuff going on. So in addition to this, there is a very strong push now for the development of green energy. So solar and wind power, looking for areas where we can develop more wind power and solar, even solar energy, even in the very northern part of the reindeer herding area. There is a lot of strategic and critical mineral deposits for this green transition. So there is a huge surge for the mining industry to start new mines. So it's not just one wind power project. It is tens of wind power projects, forestry, mining, tourism, infrastructure, roads, railroads, all kinds of stuff going on that each herding community is already dealing with and struggling to somehow find a way to keep living with the reindeers in that area that is impacted with so much other uses also. And so the question, how do we assess the cumulative impact? We have a lot of very good scientific research, modeling, and research publications stating all kinds of effects of different land uses. There is research papers indicating what are the avoidance zones, how far the reindeer will start avoiding infrastructure, even related to different kinds of infrastructure. We have a lot of research also on the impacts of forestry to reindeer husbandry or reindeer pasture lands, and also how the reindeer husbandry has tried to adapt to these situations. So we have available research of these cumulative impacts. But for some reason, these methodologies or these research publications are not so well used when these impacts are being assessed for a certain project, for example. We are often or all the time facing this issue that the herding community is not, or these research publications are not so much used because they want to look at this individual project. This project we are focusing and we want to understand the impacts of this project and not the whole situation. So it is in a way, it's certainly a problem of sort of like good governance, if whether we want to actually assess these impacts holistically or not, or do we want to develop more projects in the reindeer herding area and let the reindeer herders somehow find a way of adapting on their own. So my point is that we can assess the cumulative impacts. This is not so difficult. We have a lot of research already, scientific research, and we have the herding community's knowledge that we can use if they want to give that to us. So this is also the issue that when you are wanting to plan a new project in a herding community, you should ask them, how is this going to impact your livelihood and your culture? And if they are willing to tell you, then they are giving you knowledge for this planning process. So you should respect that as a piece of knowledge that is being provided for you for your purposes of trying to understand the situation. Maybe someone wants to comment, but this is my point, that we are constantly facing the situation that people are saying that it's so difficult to understand the big picture. It's too difficult to assess the cumulative impacts. My point is that it's not too difficult. We can do it. We have research. We have the knowledge of the herding communities. We just need to listen to them.
Yeah, Bruce and then Jouko, and perhaps our like a general question to everybody is that, okay, there is a task that can be done, but who should be doing it? Okay.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Yeah, I had a lot of experience in this in Russia, and okay, those companies are basically the Russian state. But still, what we found is companies there, like Gazprom, Lukoil, they actually have people down at that level who are responsible for the individual fields that interact with the reindeer herders, that it would depend on the individual whether best practices were followed or not. Somebody who got it and wanted to do best practices made a huge difference. And we sat in these corporate boardrooms in Naryanmar and Salipard. We had these discussions, and one of these guys, that the history was so long of an area they were going into in Nenetsokrug, they said even they wanted to do, they were told that they couldn't get access to those old reports. And then I said, oh, you have that report right there. And my background is in vegetation science and permafrost soils. And I opened it up and said, wow, there's all this useful information. He said, yeah, but that's proprietary. Because this was, what was it, Arco. And I said, we need that against our competitor, who is Shell or whatever. And I said, yeah, but you are bragging about what a good job you are doing with this mutual coexistence. And said, you don't have the right to brag if you are holding that information back. If you want to have the real mutual coexistence, they mean the herding and the gas and oil development sharing the same territory. They're proud to go on TV and show these ads. Even during reindeer herding days, they would put these ads up and say, you have to kind of walk the walk. You have to be open with this, because that's the key to making the cumulative impacts real, like looking not just at this development, but that was my experience. And I'd be interested to hear others, that these individuals have so much power, whether they want to utilize it in the way you were mentioning. That was my experience in Russia. I don't have so much experience in Nordic countries with that.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah, thank you for the presentations. And I think that there's a very similar problems in this environmental impact assessment, and also this evaluating of these cumulative impacts. And one is how we can develop it more objective. I mean that also this needs some kind of for example, this impact assessment, that who is paying or who is directing this process, and how this process should be done, that it would be objective, and I don't know, would it be possible to concentrate or collect somehow money for ELY Center, for example, for all this impact assessment, and because it also evaluate these reports of these impact assessment reports, are there enough good and enough many-sided and this kind of. And the criterions are also that what are the criterions of evaluating these, what kind of knowledge we use or information, and how we evaluate this information. That for example, of course, there's a lot of research which has been done, but there is a different kind of results that not also always uniform, and it would need some kind of at least some kind of instruction what can have to be take account, and for example, what is the time perspective. You said it is very important to evaluate the situation in whole reindeer herding district or cooperative, and it's, as you said, it's the key of this evaluation. but how far we go to back and see the change of the pastures and landscape and what are these impacts which we take account and how much we evaluate different kind of impacts and so on and then also that we go also the rights of different livelihoods and way to use lands. For example, there is a different rights concerning the laws. For example, if we think reindeer herding law, that there is a 20 northernmost reindeer herding cooperatives in Finland, where reindeer herding law says that the state land can be used so that it's cause considerable harm for reindeer, but how well it has been followed, I don't know. And what is the level of this considerable harm? It has never somehow clarified. And of course, it needs also that there is a somehow is set some kind of limit for the changes in each reindeer herding and district, how much land can be used in different kind of land use forms and who is deciding this kind of limits and what kind of level in governance system it is decided, and this kind of that there is very many problems, but as you said, it is possible and should be done and should be developed. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Joko. And we hear from Päivi, or do you want to comment?
Can I comment
Quickly? Yeah.
Okay, just quickly then, but Joko was raising a lot of points, but maybe I will quickly just comment on the issue that you also kind of raised, is the issue of power, because there is it's not equal. The herding communities don't have so much power as the companies planning or developing new projects in their areas, and this is recognized in situations, for example, with the impact assessment document that the herders are presented with. What Ida was saying, this 1,000 pages of impact assessment, that is written in a language of researchers or impact assessment language. So it is a question of whether they can be informed of these impacts that have been assessed, and can they comment or them based on being in an informed situation. This is a power question of imbalance in the power structure of this impact assessment. But then the power is related also to whose political aims are in a power position in our society when we are talking, for example, about the green shift. Whose perspective in the green shift is actually having the most say in the public debate? Is it those who are dealing with the impacts the most, the harms, or is it those who are making the investments in the municipalities?
Thank you. My name is Päivi Kainulainen. I'm coming from the Lapland ELY Center. During my last 10 years, I read a lot of these impact assessments as an official role. And I have to say that they have improved during these 10 years, quite a lot actually. I was thinking about this question of traditional knowledge. I think that is extremely important because no researcher can tell what some place means to this local herding district. Is it important? In what way is it important? In what time of a year? So that is why we demand them to have these discussions with the local herding communities so that the knowledge is seen in the impact assessment. And I can say that these assessments are far more better if they have done this in a deep enough way, these discussions. It means that they will take maps and discuss about what is going to be where, and the locals are telling what is there. And what does it mean if this area is no longer in their use? So in very simple facts are written and put on a paper, and that is the starting point of what this certain project means to the local herding communities. And there needs a lot to be done. There's a lot to be done in the future years, but in my mind, it has improved. Not enough, but it has improved. About this Jouko's question about how to go on with these issues, I was just thinking that you have the modeling, you have done the modeling for pastures, and we have the information about, for example, windmill, for how long does the district go that female reindeers does not come in this area with the cubs. So we have all the information about forestry, and we have the model. It would be, in my mind, quite interesting to see these kind of tests with the model, with all this information. What kind of a map would we have? Because this is a worry for us also, that there's a lot of project going on in a very small areas. And when is enough? I have to say that I have thought about it. And as we see that this is a common problem with Sweden and Norway, and we have, with the windmills, we have our own project going on. You can tell about that. But we have also results from the Swedish side, for example. And so that we know that these areas are due to local situations, how long it is. But perhaps it could be something that we could do together, because now we are using your products in results, and hopefully we can compare it with Finnish side studies some year. But there's a lot to be done, and why don't we do it together and start building up these models, different models? We have a good base for that modeling. So just few thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Päivi. Some of you might be leaving already soon, but hopefully many of you will stay until 11. So perhaps we need to move on and quick. Then floor to Bruce and a slightly different perspective.
Okay, I will be really quick. I just wanted to say that yes, we have the tools, but at the same time, we are at the Reindeer Herders Association, for example, we are all the time struggling with this problem of, I'll give you an example. We are now in the middle of looking at areas where you can develop new wind power and solar power in Finnish Lapland. We have they have had all this GIS data of the reindeer herding, well, not GIS data, the
Spatial data.
geospatial data. Anyway, they have this information of what are the important areas of reindeer herders. They have made consulted the herding communities. They have been able to detect areas that would cause considerable harm, with most likely would be considerably harmful for that. But even so, they are probably going to leave those areas for further development. They will write it in the report that these will probably cause considerable harm, but instead of leaving those out because of that, they are most likely going to leave them. So this is an issue of the power imbalance and the imbalance of whose interests are actually weighing in the cup when we are making decisions about land use. That was my comment.
Great. Thank you, Sanna, for that. And we will continue now with Bruce, who will have first talk a little bit for 5 minutes, and then we'll have our final discussions.
Sure. I'm going to be talking from researchers' perspective, and the charge was about this integration of local and indigenous knowledge, and I wanted to give some examples from two actually ongoing projects, but also a bit historical perspective that I was referring to earlier. And just got back a couple weeks ago from South Greenland, and how I ended up there after 32 years working in northern Russia and 30 years in northern Finland is another story. But my background is in geography, and particularly in what became rangeland science. It started as vegetation science, and I was looking at oil and gas impacts. And I was in North America, did my PhD with Inuit in northern Canada. So when I came over to Soviet Union before I came to Finland, I was actually interested in this oil and gas issue and how these territories are shared. But then I have last 3 years been in South Greenland and wanted to just give a quick, maybe 2-minute review of what's going on there and what's similar and also what's different. So some of these photos are just really 2 weeks ago, and maybe some of you recognize Florian Stamler, my colleague. He's still there. We went over together a month ago, and he's coming back this weekend. But yeah, for people who don't know it, the South Greenland is where we were, was exactly where the Vikings settled 1,000 years ago. So this was a sheep farming area until middle of 15th century. Exactly 100 years ago, sheep were reintroduced to Eric the Red's farm, and that's where we were for the celebration, which was a big, very proud celebration. But we've also been going in different seasons. So you see photos from winter. Been there. This was my 3rd trip 2 weeks ago in 3 years. And it's interesting, there's the husbandry there is a mix. People, they don't talk about semi-domesticated animals or feral. They just have a broad spectrum, and those animals that behave in a certain way are treated a certain way, and they live in very isolated communities and isolated island settings, for example. So there's a short video clip here of a father and son reindeer herder who are actually also sheep farmers, and now they're introducing musk oxen. So if you could maybe just play that clip there. You can't hear it here, but they are discussing this island about 10 by 40 kilometers where they keep the reindeer and sheep, and the winter pastures here, spring pastures there. So on this visit, we were actually going there and walking the pastures, because I work with satellite imagery, and also we were taking vegetation samples and droning these areas. But while we were there, we were also taking samples, animals for blood. And so we hunted reindeer, and we visited the slaughterhouse. That's actually the sheep, but also reindeer slaughtered there. And then this was our start 3 years ago. So we had 2 husband and wife herders from Näkkälä district, where I've been working a long time. Then one of the reindeer herders there, and then a sheep farmer there. And during that conversation, they just started talking about extreme weather, bad winter. They said, we had a bad winter last year. I said, what did you mean by that? Said, well, it rained in November, then it refroze, then the pastures locked. And I said, okay, this is really familiar. So we started having instantly discussion about these commonalities between these areas. But so extreme weather or changing weather, it's not what I was studying or as a researcher. When I came up here 30 years ago, I talked to reindeer herders. I said, what's your big issues up here? I was coming from North America. And they said, nobody talked about weather or climate change. People were talking about non-participation in the governance regimes, that their knowledge was not part of the governance. And I was coming from a background in co-management where people had legal rights to representation. So then actually things started changing. The weather did start warming, the winters and summers. And I guess we get the next image. While we were doing the field work on the oil and gas work in Yamal in West Siberia, 2 big, actually historic rain on snow events happened. One in 2006-07 and an even bigger one in 2013-14, where 61,000 animals starved in one event. So the herders asked us directly, me, myself, Rosa Laptander, Timo Pumpula, you scientists, what's causing this? We've always had rain on snow, but this is out of our experience. And we did an oral history where we found it was an anomaly going back to at least World War I. Nobody had experienced this kind of event. And they wanted to know what's causing it. So we looked at the sea ice and put together a nice reanalysis model of what was happening. And then we took it back to the herders, and we have been, until COVID and the war, we were actually reinterpreting this data with the herders because they want a couple of days notice if the modeling can give it, so they can get mobile slaughterhouses out to the herds that they know are not going to make it to the main slaughterhouse. And then they can slaughter the animals humanely and get profit before the animals starve on their own. So the next image, yeah, there. So yeah, so these critical seasons and extreme weather, these have come up in, I would say, last 15 years. But the governance issue, the non-participation in governance, that hasn't gone away. Just as the oil and gas in Russia hasn't gone away. So people, all these projects, somebody was saying that everybody wants to come up and talk about climate change. And it's like, wait a minute, we have other stuff going on, and it's been going a long time. It's not to say we're not having heat wave summers and rain in January, but there's a lot going on. So you have to deal with the complexity. A researcher can't just come in and go, oh, I want to hear about climate change. But people want to talk about that too. This is one of those rain on snow events with 2 ice crusts formed. But actually going back 2002, this is 22 years ago in the Näkkälä district, where when we started going up there, the governance was an issue, but also overgrazing. They were so tired of hearing that the tundra is overgrazed, you have to reduce the number of animals, maybe even reduce the number of families involved. And Yoko knows this issue well because he's written the best histories of how this overgrazing narrative developed. And lichens did disappear over large areas, but there was forestry going on. There was hydropower. There's lots of reasons for shrinking of reindeer areas, but trampling in this border area was the main issue. So people have taken action, and they have worked to keep animals. It's a big job when you have very little wetlands up there. And these are fences we built specifically in wetlands because the herder said, we want to talk about wetlands. This is where the calves are growing in. We don't want to talk about, it's not to say the lichens are not an issue up in the fjells, but so this is long-term research that hasn't had to stop because of COVID and the war. But this is the work that developed with somebody we'd actually been working already a couple decades on the oil and gas development, who then explained strategies for dealing with rain and snow. And they also wanted to talk about overgrazing. So we built permanent exclosures in different habitats because the same overgrazing narrative has been going on in Soviet Union since 1930s, at least. And herders are just as tired of that there, again, saying not that there's not too many animals in places in certain times, but we have a lot of other stuff going on. But cold, warm winters with rain and snow and hot summers. In an area like this, where it's very flat, you can see the lakes are important. Nobody slaughters reindeer in summer. They're living on fish during the spring, summer, and winter. But in this case, where it was 32 degrees for weeks on ends, the wetlands start to dry out, and some of the lakes actually even drain. And then the fish that people depend on are not there. And that's when people start to worry. So what I wanted to raise this intersection of all these issues here is kind of, this is where we are now. People are talking about extreme weather. They are talking about critical seasons. What I mean is a few days during a season like now, this breakfast, we were talking about the mushrooms this year. If the mushrooms don't come, people are already a bit stressed. Animals are heading into winter with not as much nutrition. And this is an issue it's sometimes very local, but when you have a heat wave affecting a whole area, this was 36 degrees down at the tree line and 32 up at 72 degrees north. So that heat wave, that lasted all summer over a huge area. So these extreme weather and critical seasons, these are issues that transcend borders. So that's why I like this meeting, that we are not talking about Norway or Sweden or Finland. We're talking about issues that transcend borders, and how to make, what I liked hearing today was how these partnerships have to develop further. And we have to think how these like what Ida said, these 1,000-page reports, those are not going away. Questions are, how do we kind of crowdsource our tools and knowledge and expertise and ideas to deal with that? Because we're gonna, the mines aren't going away. And the last point about the mines is the blowing dust. This was my very first interview with very first reindeer herder on Yamal, 1991, was about the road, but also about the cumulative impacts. They said they are calculating compensation based on the size of the road, actually how many square meters it covers. And as soon as they leave, the dust is blowing out, and it's affecting the mushrooms, it's affecting the cloudberries, the reindeer who eat it, their teeth are wearing out prematurely. None of that was calculated into this very low compensation they got. So the work for me in Russia is over, but I think have a lot of lessons I think would be interesting to learn from you guys. How do we do this kind of research here in the future? Because governance and overgrazing, they haven't gone away.
Thank you, Bruce. So building on what you just presented, it's a good question would actually be how the scientific community and academia and research can be benefited by reindeer herders, because a lot of the discussion so far has been around how can local knowledge be integrated in research, but how can the research that is being made actually be used in a practical way, in a good way, to benefit reindeer husbandry.
Yeah.
What are the obstacles so far for research to reach reindeer practitioners themselves, according to you?
Do you want me or do you want others?
Audience.
Yeah, audience.
Do you use scientific knowledge in your work? They are nodding. How and yeah.
And what else is needed?
Yeah.
I feel I have to comment on this because I actually worked in a research project that is funded by the United States, and it's National Science Foundation, and the program is navigating the new Arctic. And I think I was in this conference in Washington, D.C. this March this year, and the whole conference was about how to involve local people to research and the best practices. So I could talk much about this topic. And one of the reasons that I work in that research is because the National Science Foundation is obligating the research groups to hire people from the local communities, not only to collect the data, but if it's possible and if there are like right people, because I have a background in research and developing projects as well, and they kind of want them to hire people from local communities. So it's kind of a link between the local community and with the researchers. So, and it's kind of a hard job, I have noticed, but also because the researchers want to differ from the mining companies who comes and collects our knowledge, and we should have, the knowledge has value, so they don't want to exploit us as a local community. So I think that is something. I have worked in EU projects as well, and they don't have similar things that they would have these methods how to have local people involving in these projects. So that is one thing I feel is good about this United States funded program. So I think maybe it's more like a comment that you should also think about practices, how to get people involved in a way that it doesn't wear them out, because there's lots of research fatigue as well in our communities, all these impact assessments, but also researchers want to come and ask the same questions all over again. So it takes lots of time. So you should probably, and the founding organizations should think about how are you going to do this in a way that doesn't harm the communities or take the resources from them. So I don't know, lots of things. Yeah.
Make a quick follow-up on that, because I'm actually originally from the US, and I was going to say I ran out of time, but yeah, things have gotten better. Who was saying that things have gotten better? What I have seen change here is that the funding calls have gotten much better in terms of saying that local and indigenous knowledge should be incorporated. But the National Science Foundation and Canada research councils differ because they require support letters from local communities that this has been completely vetted from the ground up. Otherwise, they won't get the research permit. And we have been in our EU and Finnish funded projects, we have been doing this anyway. It's not required, and this is a big gap we see now. And some of us are working on new proposals now, and we're still trying to. We get these letters. We actually, Sanna knows, because we've gotten these from Panelists, and they count. The reviewers who review our proposals say that we're so happy to hear that the community wants this, and that this is a two-way street. It's not just going in and getting knowledge and publishing nice papers.
So I just would,
Yeah.
so, and I don't mean just like paying money, but
Yeah, yeah.
you should also think about how to give the knowledge back, not just that you publish in a magazine that we can't even read or access, so that you could give something. The knowledge should be understandable to the local communities.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tiina Sanila-Aikio, and I'm the chair of the Association of Sami Reindeer Herding Cooperatives. I would say to this that the researchers should be also asking what kind of needs do we have, and also we have good examples on that. That if we have some needs, and then we put the research together. So the results are benefiting us, both the scientific researchers and the indigenous peoples. But maybe we should be also looking to the other indigenous peoples and the studies which are made there to their natural resources and traditional indigenous livelihoods. So what could we learn from there? Because my eyes were wide opened after the doctoral study of Anne-Maria Makka made this March, that there are so many things thought already that are ready, that we could use, but we don't know anything about them. So the exchange of indigenous studies would be also very important. But then a short comment to these discussions earlier, that I think the biggest problem at the moment is in the processes, that there should be demand already in the beginning of anything, if it's study or impact assessment or something, that how are we going to involve the local and indigenous communities from the beginning, and how it should be done that it doesn't cause harm, and that this time, working time we are using to this is compensated. And I don't think that is any present or something from the who is ordering the research, but this should be, if they pay to the consult, so it's the same. It's a salary, not a gift or something that you are paying these people to your side. Thank you.
Thank you very much for good discussion during these 2 hours. Sophie, I think we need to close. Yeah. So we promised 2 hours panel, and that we have done. Thank you. And there are, as Sophie said, there are some leaflets if you are interested to take from the past week conference, and also one other leaflet that is in Finnish. There are also empty papers, so if you have any feedback, and especially we would like to hear burning questions. I mean, what sort of issues you would like to consider when perhaps many of us meet next time. That might be in Alta. Do you want to say when in Alta, and what is the name of the conference?
Yeah, or maybe even Svein, because NIBIO is actually organizing it at this time. NKJ and the Nordic Reindeer Committee will be a part of it and fund the conference, but maybe just mention the dates. And
I must look in my calendar. I think it's For second, do you have it?
Is it the 7th?
I think it's February 19th
Yeah,
onwards, couple of days.
Yeah.
In Alta.
in Alta. Yeah, more information. And actually, we're working to try to get compensating for bed and food for reindeer herders. But I'm not sure if we managed, but we're trying to do.
Yeah. So if
Yeah.
you have like some sort of issue you would like people there to consider, we are now putting together sessions. So please give some feedback on the papers, and thank you. And we will go to the other venue, Kellokas, to have lunch, and then the actual research days will continue there. And our small but long workshop will also continue there in the library. Okay, thank you. Joo, kyllä vaan. Ole hyvä, saat aina.